Instead of asking a woman out on a proper date, like, I'm going to pick you up at this time, here's what we're going to do. It was just like, hey, let's just.
Brett McKay is the founder and editor in chief of The Art of Manliness, the largest independent men's lifestyle magazine on the web with over 10 million monthly page views. He lives with his wife, Kate, who is also the Art of Manliness editor and podcast producer, along with their two children in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
When we hear manliness, we think, oh, it's like drinking beer and watching football and being macho.
He and Kate now also host a Substack newsletter called Dying Breed, in addition to their hugely influential Art of Manliness podcast series. The Art of Manliness podcast aims to help men become better men. Through in-depth interviews with authors and thinkers, host Brett McKay finds insights on how men can better understand their culture, their lives, and themselves, and recapture the ancient and classical ideal of manliness, excellence, and flourishing. Two very powerful concepts. And by the way, it is rated by Spotify as one of the top 1% of all podcasts in the world. Wow. Thanks for joining us and welcome to Pizza Quest, Brett.
Well, thanks for having me, Peter. It's great talking to you again. You've been a guest on the Art of Manliness podcast.
I've been a guest on your podcast, and that's how, kind of realized that I have a lot to learn from you, and I would love to explore some of the things that, this intro is kind of loaded and needs to be unpacked a little bit of the various things. And I want to find out in our conversation how it all came to be. But since we, are talking about self-discovery and transformation, I wanted to start with just a question, get the ball rolling, and then see where it leads us. And here's my question for you, Brett. Can you share the most impactful story that you've heard from your listeners about a person or any of them whose lives have been transformed by the Art of Manliness?
That's a great question because we've gotten so many over the years. So we've been doing this for 17 years. And one of the things that gives me a lot of satisfaction and joy is getting letters from readers who've been reading the website or listening to the podcast since they were in high school. And now they're married and have kids. And they, write these letters and say, you were with me all the way. Like, you helped me learn how to tie a tie when I was going to the high school dance for the first time. You were there when I was asking my soon-to-be wife on our first date. You were there when I made the proposal. You were there when I had my first kid. So that's really sad. I mean, it's amazing. I've been doing this that long that there are kids or people who started reading this when they were 16 and now they're, in their mid 30s. And that's one thing I really enjoy reading. But some of the biggest transformations, it's just people who will reach out and say, I found your site when I was in a low point in my life. It could have been a job loss. It could have been a sickness of some sort, divorce, and they found something there. We have, over 3,000 articles. We got 1,000 episodes. They found something that resonated and helped them get out of the funk or help them start making headway in their life. So yeah, we've gotten lots of them like that too many to count, and they all kind of blend together. But
Are there any
kind
in particular that kind of jump out at you? Like, I mean, you've covered just about every topic I can think of. You probably even have one on like how to properly propose, to
yeah,
your
we do.
intended.
Yeah, we got that. I mean, I've gotten wedding invitations from people saying, hey, because of your, I think we wrote an article about, it was just like, stop hanging out with women and start dating them. And this was written, back in 2008. And this is kind of, I felt like that time, I think it's still happening today, but a lot of young people were just hanging out, especially guys. Instead of asking a woman out on a proper date, like, hey, I planned something, I'm going to pick you up at this time, here's what we're going to do. It was just like, hey, we're just going to hang out. You want to hang out? So it was kind of ambiguous. But I remember this one guy, he said, I read that article and I saw there's this girl that I saw that she worked at some store at the mall, and I thought she was really cute. And I'd talked to her and I thought she was really nice. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna ask this girl out on a date.
Yeah.
And so he did. He just like very boldly, like, hey, I think you're really great. I'd like to get to know you more. Would you like to go on a date? And I got a wedding invitation from that guy because that couple ended up getting married
Oh,
because of that article. So it's neat stuff like that. And then you also get just articles or letters from people saying, "Hey, I really enjoyed your article about wet shaving." And I was like, I can't believe like wet shaving. That was the thing. But it's like it's added something to my life that I didn't have before. Because we talk about the old school. Our very first article we published was how to shave like your grandpa. This
yeah.
is about how to use a safety razor and a badger brush. And I get a lot of letters like that. That really meant a lot 'cause it made this chore that I do every day into a bit more of a pleasurable ritual. So that's another little thing. I'm always surprised at that people like that was the most impactful thing. But hey, that's great. I'm glad that you got
Isn't
something
that
out of that.
interesting? Yeah, because we talk about these big concepts like, did I say it right? Arete?
Yeah, I
Um,
say arate, yeah.
Arete. Because you're a philosophy major in a sense, so you understand these concepts. You go back to Plato. You've got, I think, even have some either articles or podcasts about Platonic and Aristotelian ideas, and so you cover everything from sort of this very high level, and then as mundane and everyday, and as shaving, as how to shave your face like or how to live like what was it, the recent one, how to sleep like the cavemen.
How to sleep, yeah, it was a podcast, how to sleep, how to get your better sleep. Or looking at the caveman. Yeah. Uh, I'm a big Aristotle fan. And what I love about Aristotle is that he does capture his philosophy captures the big and the transcendent. But then he also gets really practical. It's like if you want to live a flourishing life, the small day-to-day things matter. Um, and it all adds up to a bigger flourishing life. That's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of Aristotle. He combines the contemplative with the action.
And what that's one of the things that's really jumped off the page at me when I first discovered you is that I have rarely hear anybody talk about eudaimonia, which
Yeah.
is a concept that has kind of driven me for years. Pizza Quest, even though it's really talks about pizza a lot, is really at its deeper purpose about the search for self-discovery and a meaningfulness in life. And uh, when I first learned about eudaimonia many, or heard the word and the definition for it as sort of a term coined by the Greeks, maybe it was Aristotle or the philosophers of that era, as that the purpose of life is to flourish. A whole bunch of light bulbs went off for me. And I think it feels like your site is kind of triggered by that kind of light bulb insight.
It is. So I mean, we can get into the impetus behind the site. With my background in classics and letters, I read a lot of like, ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, philosophy. Then I also read a lot from uh, the founding fathers, kind of the people from the Enlightenment era who were
Uh-huh.
inspired by the Greeks and the Romans. And one thing I found when you read these guys, particularly the guys in the 18th century, so we're talking about the 1700s, they would talk about manliness. They talk about the manliness of George Washington or the
Yeah.
manliness of John Adams. And for us in this is the late 20th century, early 21st century, when we hear manliness, we think, oh, it's like drinking beer and watching football and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger being macho.
Yeah, macho seems to be the equivalent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But for these guys in the 18th century, they were going back to something deeper. Manliness was it was basically it was a virtue. It was like being manhood, manliness was a virtue.
Yeah.
And when they talked about manliness, they were kind of going back to this sort of Roman idea of virtus, virtus, which meant manliness. That's where we got our word virtue from. But for the Romans, it meant strength, physical prowess, of course, because they were very a warlike people. But it also meant having developed virtues like temperance and prudence, self-control, frugality, magnanimity. And I really like that idea because and it reminded me of my grandfather.
No.
My grandfather was born in the 1900s. Served in World War II. Worked for the Forest Service. And Grandpa, he was the coolest dude ever. He could go out into the wilderness with nothing but a pack horse and survive for 3 weeks fishing and uh doing whatever to sustain himself. But like he was just like he had like a refinement to him that I felt I was lacking, that like a lot of guys was lacking. So he had, I feel like my grandfather, my mom's father, really embodied that idea of manliness that, you know, George Washington and Aristotle were talking about. So I was like, you
Yeah,
know what? I want to bring that back. I think it's a great idea. We've lost that. I think it's a positive ideal for men to strive for.
yeah.
So let's see if we can make that happen.
It's kind of like, what do we have to look up to? And I think that even, citing your grandfather, many of us have somebody in our life, and often it is a grandfather or a father who was the person that we aspire to be like.
Yeah.
And so is that kind of what triggered the whole idea of launching the Art of
No, so what
Manliness?
the story is, there's an actual like origin story to the Art of Manliness. It
Yeah.
started the seeds were planted in 2007. So I was a law student at the University of Tulsa, and I was in the midst of studying for finals. And I went over to the Borders bookstore that's nearby our house and just take a break. And like I always did, I think I'm sure you did this too. When you went to a bookstore, you just go to the magazine section
Yep.
and go look at the men's, look at the magazines. So I was in the men's section and I was looking at these covers and I was realizing, oh my gosh, these things that it's always the same thing every month. It's like how to get six pack abs. Um, Articles about, how to have a vibrant sex life. It was all about
Right.
how to, the latest expensive clothes you need to own, the watches, the trips you had to go on. And I remember looking at this like, you know what, this doesn't really resonate with me as a married, broke law student. I was like, there's got to be more to being a man than this. And I thought, why don't I start the men's magazine that I'd want to read?
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. At the time, this is when blogging was taking off. And I'd been doing some blogging before that, this time. And I said, you know what? I can just buy a domain name, uh, load up WordPress, and start writing. And that's what I did. So right there, I had a Moleskine, pulled out my Moleskine
Notebook.
notebook,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I started generating like article ideas that I'd write about, categories that would be in this website. And I started generating title or the names of the websites. That's the most important thing, the name. That's the most important thing. And so I remember when I was in college, I had read this book called The Manly Arts, which is about 19th century bare knuckle boxing. I thought that would be cool. And
Yeah.
and I was thinking, I want this kind of like a vintage feel, like reminds me of my grandfather, Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah. Kind of a
So
John L. Sullivan pose.
yeah, John. And I was like, yeah, I think it'd be cool to have like a 19th century boxer. And I didn't even know who John L. Sullivan was at the time, but I was like, I want a bare knuckle boxer as my logo. And so I put the Manly Arts, and it's like that doesn't sound good. And I was like, well, how about the Art of Manliness?
Yeah.
That's got a ring to it.
It's clever.
Um, so that's what I did, and I went home and I told my wife, I was like, I got this great idea for a blog. I think it's great. And she was like, you need to study. Like you're in law school. You need
You're
to,
right.
this is what you need to focus on. I was like, okay, well, I'll wait till after finals are over, then I'll get going. And so yeah, finals were over that winter 2007. And during the break, I did all the web design myself. I was terrible at it, but just through trial and error and lots of Google help, I was able to get something up. Did my own photoshopping, got John L. Sullivan there, created the first logo, and launched it like shortly after January 1st, 2008. And the very first article was How to Shave Like Your Grandpa, which was a deep dive into not straight razor shaving, safety razor shaving.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how it started. And I just was publishing 3 times a week because I was busy with law school and law review.
So
And
you were basically, it was like a blog. You were just writing
it was
these
a
things. You
blog. Yeah,
weren't,
it was
yeah.
text articles. That was it. And it really, what took off, what happened was I think it was like March 2008. So like 3 months after I started the thing, I was sitting in wills, estates, and trusts law, which is a really boring topic of law. And I was learning about, uh, you know, first cousin once removed and second cousins and who gets what whenever you die. And, of course, I wasn't paying much attention. So I was checking out the website and checking out the statistics. And I saw that my site was crashed. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? It's not working. This is not good. And then I went and checked the analytics, And I was getting all this traffic from this website called dig.com. So for those who
Ah,
you don't remember, dig.com was one of the very first social news sites. And so the premise of this website was people would submit articles they found online, and then people would give it a dig, which is basically a vote, like this is great. And then it eventually made it to the front page of Dig, and this had a huge audience. And so if you had an article that made it to the front page of Dig, like you're just gonna, it was called the Dig effect. You're just gonna get bombarded with traffic, and that's what
wow.
happened. Someone submitted that "How to Shave Like Your Grandpa" article to Dig. It got up on the front page of Dig, and then it went viral after that. And I had to upgrade my servers and to make room for that. And from that moment on, it was kind of off to the races. Really, I was on the radar, and that's what happened. And I mean, it was really crazy. By the summer, I had a book deal. This is the time when book publishers were looking for blogs to turn into books.
Yeah.
So you had a book deal by the end of the summer, and it just continued to grow.
It took on a life of its own. And is dig.com still even in existence, or is
It's
it
in existence, but it's not what it was. Not It's a shadow of its former self. Yeah,
been taken
it
over
was a
by
lot more like
Instagram?
Reddit. Yeah, it was a lot more like Reddit um back then, but not it's not like that anymore.
But what a great, well, fortuitous, number one, that
Yeah.
but not a coincidence that that it got cited, and then it took off. So it's pretty much taken over your life. I mean, you've got a huge operation. You're doing the magazine, which is the continuation of articles and things that you write and research, along with your wife, Kate.
Mhm.
You've got the podcast. You've done over 1,000. You say, I think I'm up to 1,056 of the podcast, or something like that.
Yeah, I published 1057 this morning.
57. Oh, what was today's publishing?
Oh, it was about the history of the notebook.
That's
Uh
right. And when you mentioned Moleskin, I thought of this. That's
yeah.
right. That's the newest one. So how important is a notebook? Is that
Yeah.
who did you interview for that?
This guy named Roland Allen, I think is his last name. British guy, and really great book. He goes and he's in marketing, but he decided to just do a deep dive into the history of the notebook and its influence on our culture, and it's a big influence.
Well, it has to have resonated with you since you
Oh, for
started
sure.
this whole thing with your notebook.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So I got to listen to that one because notebooks have been so important to any of us who are doing writing. I think that's where a lot of your sparks get captured and turned into flames. So that's really cool. And so you got 1,000. You got the magazine that's been going. You've been doing this now for at least 15 years, right?
17,
17
starting
total.
2008, 2025. That's 17, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you're doing this. This is your life. You
This
you
is my
you are a
career. Yeah.
publisher and a producer and a content provider, but this is your livelihood as well.
Correct. Yeah. So, by the time I graduated from law school in 2009, I was, we were making enough money from the website where like it could be a living. It would be a meager living. We had to eat beans and rice, and whatnot. But I was like, it was an option where I didn't have to practice law. So what ended up happening, I graduated in 2009. I decided, law wasn't for me after doing some internships. So I forego doing the bar exam. But there was a lot of, you feel bad. You spent 3 years, made
Right,
lots of
right.
money, and you're not even gonna use this degree. And then also I was worried about, health insurance and benefits and things like that because I was, a new family. And so what I did is I worked for Thomson Reuters in their law department for their legal research company called Westlaw that lawyers
Uh-huh.
use. It was a great job. I trained law students how to use Westlaw, and I got to work from home, very flexible. And I was doing that and the blog. Um, and what happened was, I think it was like 2010, our son Gus was born, and things were picking up with the website even more. Busy being a dad, and I had to make this decision. Like, I can't do all of this. I gotta burn the boats, so to speak. And so, yeah, I think end of 2010 or beginning of 2011, I quit my job with Westlaw and went completely full time
All
with the
in.
Art of Manliness.
And And Kate also is a contributor and does it so much. I mean, she's
Yeah.
your
No,
partner in this
we are
project.
partners in crime with this. So Kate, came on shortly after I started in 2008. I was in the middle of what happened was I think I was studying for my spring finals in law school, and I was like, Kate, I'm really busy. I need to keep up my schedule. Could you write something? Um, and Kate was a history teacher. She was at the community college here in town. She's got a background in history. She has her master's in religion. Very great
Perfect.
writer, great researcher. And I was like, "Can you help me out?" She's like, "Oh yeah, of course." So she started this series about Benjamin Franklin and his quest to live the virtuous life.
Ah,
So Ben Franklin, when he was a young man,
yeah,
made this goal to achieve moral perfection, and he did this by trying to live 13 virtues. And he even created these because he's very Benjamin Franklin, right? He's going to be very systematic about this whole thing. Created
right.
these notebooks with a chart where he could keep track if he was being temperate or living an orderly life or living a chaste life. Didn't do a very good a job at that sometimes. Um,
Or some people might think he did very well.
yeah. Yeah. So she started the series. That's when she started working. And since then it's been a collaborative effort. We work on all the articles together. Sometimes I'm the main writer, sometimes she's the main writer. But it is a collaboration. And the podcast, that actually started in 2009. And I just did it because podcasts were new at the time. I was like, this is
Yeah,
kind of, I was in that phase of my career where you're just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and exploring, and seeing what you liked and seeing what worked. So I did the podcast. For me, it was basically an excuse to talk to authors of books that I read.
yeah,
Always been a voracious reader. The podcast was just an excuse to talk to people who wrote books that I enjoyed. Um, and I started in 2009. It didn't really go anywhere. I didn't get much feedback on it. It took a lot of time, and there was no way to monetize podcasts at the time, really. And so I did it for a year, and then I decided, you know what? No one really cares about this. Like, downloads are sort of anemic. I don't get any emails about like, hey, I enjoy the podcast. Um, Most of our revenue came from, writing text articles from web advertising. It's like, I'm going to put the podcast on hold. So we put the podcast on hold. And then in around 2012, I started getting emails from people like, hey, what happened to your podcast?
right.
I'm like, why am I getting all these emails? And I think what happened was that was around the time when podcasting started to pick up a little bit of mainstream attention. I
Yeah,
think really was the thing that did it was there was that podcast Serial from NPR. I think it was
right.
like a murder true crime
The true
podcast.
crime podcasts really kind of like were
Yeah, that was the thing.
viral for them. Yeah,
And so I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll bring back the podcast. And what was happening, there was an ecosystem starting to develop in the podcast business where there was um, better technology. There was actually companies out there that are helping podcasts monetize. And so I started the podcast again, and I got connected with the company that started managing our advertising for our podcast. And podcast became a big thing. So the podcast for a long time was like the side project. It wasn't
yeah.
the main driver of revenue or attention for what we're doing here. I would say around 2015, 2017, the podcast became really like the main event, and the website, the text articles was kind of the side project. So.
Interesting how that kind of pivoted like that. Uh, Not too long after that, we kind of entered the COVID era. Did that impact your plan?
No, I mean, it was actually COVID was really great for our business.
Yeah,
Because a lot of our articles, we got so much search traffic during that time because a lot of our articles were just like how to do stuff, like how to like we even have a lot of articles like on hobbies and things like that. So we had a lot of people who were looking for articles on how to bake bread. Because a lot of people were baking bread during COVID.
that was
Um,
good for me when that happened. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, so our web traffic went up. That was great. Yeah, the podcast, it has affected the podcast. Uh, 2020, everyone was bored, everyone was at home, so everyone started a podcast. So competition definitely got
Yeah.
stiffer
It's a
from
very crowded
2020.
field these days,
It's
but
super crowded. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it was, back then when I was first starting out, I was a top 50, top 25 Apple podcast.
Yeah.
um like the entire ecosystem. That's not the case anymore because there there's too many podcasts to compete with.
But every podcast has to find its niche, and you have kind of had already established your niche.
Yeah. So I
And
had the first, yeah, I had the first mover advantage. I feel like I have my audience. Like the guys have been, not even guys, you have a lot of women that listen to the podcast and read the
well,
website.
that's a question I really wanted to get to, because the art of manliness, it's your audience is not just men, right?
No, yeah. So I'd say like 85% are male. Um, so we have about 15% who are women. And yeah, the women like what we do. The women, I don't know what how would they say describe it? They like it because, it gives them an insight about the men in their life. They want to help the
Yeah.
men in their lives, their
Yeah.
moms, their wives, their sisters, their daughters. But also, I mean, a lot of the content we write, I mean, it is geared towards men, but it's applicable to anybody,
Because
really.
it's really universal. The deeper purpose
Yeah.
of this is much more universal than
Oh,
just,
for sure.
yeah.
And I think it's just yeah, I mean, we're our audience, we're just trying to target men. We're trying to present this information in a way that I think men would find appealing. But of course, women can find it appealing as well. I mean, it's like I give the example, like I'll pick up. I read women's magazines. Like I'll pick up when I'm at the dentist and there's a copy of Family Circle. I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna
Right.
thumb through and oh, here's a great tip on how to organize my Tupperware. This is actually really handy. Like,
Exactly. I don't subscribe to Vogue, but whenever I'm in a store that has a copy, I always pick it up and look
yeah,
through it.
yeah, I do. Because it's just interesting. So yeah, we do have a very we have pretty substantial, not substantial, like 15% of our audience are women, and they're awesome. We love them.
Well, let me, if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of dive into sort of the how the sausage is made side of this thing, because it is your livelihood, it's your business, it's your you are a publisher, so to speak,
Yeah,
a media publisher. Um, how does that work? You mentioned earlier the revenue. How does revenue come to you, and because we have a lot of listeners who are asking the same question. I got a little podcast. How do I monetize it? What do I need to do to make it work?
yeah.
And
So we're primarily advertising supported. So
that's
and
because of the
this
viewers that you
the
have.
size, yeah, the size. That's if you want to monetize a podcast or website through advertising, you got to have scale, you got to have volume. That's just the name of the game.
What kind of volume does it take to kind of get that kind of?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, maybe less than you think. Um, I mean, right now our podcast, we've moved from 2 episodes a week to 1 episode a week. So we're getting, 750,000 downloads a month. And so that's down from when we were doing two a week. That's fine. I don't know. I would say if you can get maybe 5,000 downloads a month.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's just you're who you can monetize with will differ as depending on the size. So if you are a smaller podcast, there's a lot. What's great about the ecosystem now, there's a lot of marketplaces that will help you sell your podcast, for example, even if you don't have a huge audience.
Uh,
So there's like a website called Podcorn, I think. You can go there, submit you're available for advertising, and advertisers can come and advertise on your show. Um, I'm sure there's a lot of places now where you can sign up to have programmatic podcast advertising. Do you
uh,
know what programmatic advertising is?
we're carried, our audio podcast carried by Heritage Radio Network, which is sort of food-based podcast.
Yeah,
And so we bring in, a little bit of advertising from that, and also they bring in, the advertisers or the sponsors that support the network as a whole. And
yeah.
so some of that overlaps to us. But you have, that's just one spoke for you, the podcast. You also we're already monetizing the magazine aspect
Yeah,
and
yeah, we call it the text content. That's what we
the
call it. So
text.
we do that just primarily through banner ads. So
And
there's
that
whenever
just comes to you through you again, you work through agencies on that, or
Yeah,
do they just
there's all
guide
these
you?
networks. Yeah, we have a network that we work with. The web monetization, I mean that's just changed dramatically since we started. When the very beginning, you could get there's just more money. Like that was the only game in town. So if an advertiser wanted to advertise, they had to go to a website. We started before Facebook, before Instagram even existed before
Uh-huh.
Pinterest. And so if a brand had ad dollars, they would just go to a website. And so back then, in addition to banner advertisements, we'd also do sponsored content. And so what would happen, we had an agency that we'd go to, and the agency would say, hey, Dockers wants to advertise on the website. And they want to do some sponsored content. And like, okay. And they say, here's the theme of their brand campaign that they're doing. It could be like, they're releasing the alpha khaki. And so they're looking for content that's kind of hits that alpha khaki brand. So kind of outdoorsy, the guy who's working on his motorcycle, but then goes to the PTA meeting. So come up with some content around that. So we would develop some content ideas. There was no product placement. It was just like the theme of the article hit the brand theme. And at the top of the article, it would say, this article brought to you in part by Khaki's Alpha, Docker's Alpha Khaki. And yeah, I mean that was how we monetized. That was a big source of our monetization. But all that went away because now brands are shifting towards influencers. So
Uh,
Instagram things and TikTok and that, or they're spending money on podcasts. So yeah, like web, like the text aspect of the business, it doesn't make as much money as it is. It's just the nature of the market. That's
yeah,
not
it's
where it's
a
at.
kind of shifting sands there with everything. Um, but do you sell products as well? I mean, I know you've published a number of books, so
Yeah,
your books are also a type of product that you
yeah.
market through the website. That's got to be another little revenue stream.
It's a small one. Books don't make that much money.
But they're cool books. I mean,
They're cool
you
books.
take
They're
all
fun.
the things that you're doing on the podcast, you can turn into books.
Yeah, for sure. We did for a while sell merch, so like T-shirts, and
Yeah,
we even made our own version of Ben Franklin's Virtue Journal. We did some pocket knives. The merch was fun. It wasn't very profitable though. Like the margins on it are awful. It's very expensive to do because you have to pay for shipping and then if people have returns, like that's really expensive and as the time went on, we started we were dealing with like all sorts like just more instances of fraud. It just got really expensive. It got more
yeah.
expensive. I remember I'd look at the P&L sheet of our sort of the merch side of the business, and I'm like, boy, we did a lot of work for not very much money. You just you just see the expenses and like this. I don't know if this is worth it. So we actually stopped doing merch this year.
We had a guest on ours. I don't know if you've had him on yours, but he would be a good fit. Named Meathead Goldwyn, who's written a book about how to cook meat and everything you need to know about meat cooking. And it's really a food science book. It's wonderful. But he's got a very successful um, I don't know if it's a website, I guess, called amazingribs.com, in which he's built up a following of, hundreds of thousands of followers, and he doesn't sell anything. It's just all content driven. He doesn't carry product, but the way he finally figured it out, he shared this with us, is how to monetize it is that he offers, and I think this is where the Substack thing comes in. He offers a premium membership. Where for a small amount of money, if people subscribe for $35 a year, they get perks that the regular readers don't
Yeah.
get. Is that something that you do with Art of Manliness?
So one thing we did do in 2017, we launched a membership website called The Strenuous Life. And basically it's Boy Scouts for grown men. We took all the content that we, published on the Art of Manliness up until that point. So this is, almost 10 years. And we created 50 badges, like merit badges, based around this content. So we have badges on wilderness survival. We have a outdoor chef badge. We have a badge called the hosting badge, how to be a good social host. We have personal finance badge. We've got a shaving badge. We've got, I'm trying to think of the other badges. Yeah, a virtue badge. We've got a monk
They're like
badge.
those merit badges you get when you're a
Yeah, it's
Boy
a
Scout.
merit badge. And then in
Yeah.
addition to that, you can earn the badges. We have this challenge you do. It's called the Strenuous Life Challenge, where if you complete these 12 weekly challenges that we give you, and you have to do a certain amount of daily check-ins for your physical fitness, and doing a good deed, um, then we'll send you this challenge coin. And then when you sign up for the program, we'll send you a PT uniform, a physical training uniform. It's a
Oh,
t-shirt and a pair of Army Ranger, shorts they use in the Army for physical
that's
training.
cool. So
There's a
you're in a
handbook.
club.
Yeah, you're in a club. You're in a handbook. We send you a membership card. Um, and then so yeah, you can do all this stuff on the platform, and then there's ways you can meet up with other men in your area for local meetups, and so that's
Did
uh,
that develop? Did that really start to happen?
yeah. So we started that in 2017. We've had 11,000 individuals go through it.
That's substantial number of people. That's
Yeah, and so it's a paid thing. You have to pay for to join that. And it's kind of like its own separate thing. It's like really it's a separate business from the Art of Manliness. The Art of Manliness is really the funnel to over there. But yeah, the meetups are great. We've got areas that have a really vibrant and strong group of guys getting together. Um, and it's been fun to see. And it's entirely member driven, really, like the social aspect of it. The guys, it's up to them to get things going. And it's been fun to see what guys have done. One of the things that's grown out of that is this thing called the Stren Fest. And so what will happen is uh, guys in a large geographic area will plan these 3 to 4 day long events where they just do strenuous life stuff. So they'll work on badges together, for 3 or 4 days. And they're out in the woods camping somewhere.
wow,
So yeah, there's been a Stren Fest there's one going on in Texas. There's one in the mountain region of Utah. There's the southeast area of the United States. Then there's one kind of in the Pennsylvania,
interesting.
Ohio area.
So it's spun off its own cultural sort of
Yeah, I
gathering
mean, the
place.
reason I started it, I mean, at the time I was getting all these letters from guys saying like, "Hey, look, you write all this great content on how to do stuff, but I don't know how to get started." So I wanted to help guys take the things they've been reading on Art of Manliness and put it into action.
Yeah, yeah.
Take action on it because it's not doing you anything if you're just reading it. And then I also wanted to find a way to help guys meet other guys in person because I know for a lot of men, making friends is hard. And so that was the idea. It's just like I want guys to get together and do stuff. That's it. And so how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to create like kind of Boy Scouts for men, and that's what we did.
And it really is. I mean, and it ties right in with your original, vision of this place of appealing to the virtuous side of
Yeah,
our nature, of our
that's
better
what we're trying to
angels.
do. That's what we're trying to do.
So that is still going and it's growing, it sounds like. Do you ever
It's
attend? Do you ever like get invited to come to one? What are they called? String? Did you say string? Or
Sprint Fest. I've not been to a Sprint Fest yet, but I do meet up here locally with the guys in Tulsa. We get
uh,
together for a ruck. So it's basically put on a backpack with weight, and we just
yeah.
go hike around. And then we've developed some traditions in Strenuous Life over the year. One thing we have is called the annual gentleman's dinner. And so we encourage all the guys in the area, in their local areas, to get together and just have a dinner with the boys. There are some women that have joined Strenuous Life, so we occasionally have some women that show up. But yeah, they dress up. We encourage guys to wear a suit. Um, Go to a nice restaurant. It could be hosted at someone's home, and they just kind of celebrate the year and just make plans for the coming year. So the
So
gentleman's dinner usually happens in December. This year we're trying to start a new tradition on um, around the birthday of Teddy Roosevelt, who's kind of like the patron saint of the strenuous life. Who came
that
up with
makes
the whole idea
sense.
of
Yeah,
strenuous life.
that makes really
Around
sense.
his birthday, we do a Teddy Roosevelt Day of Service, and so we encourage guys to get together in the local area and do some sort of service project. So
I think
here in
Teddy
Tulsa,
would have loved what you're doing with
oh
this.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, what we did in Tulsa is we went to a local wilderness area here in town and picked up trash for the day. So
And so you create it's a fellowship of
yeah,
like-minded people that are now I know that in your bio it mentions how much you enjoy working out. You're a barbell guy and or
yeah.
and also an outdoorsman. So is that still a big part of your life? Is physical training?
Yeah, I train every day. And it's a big part. I used to do powerlifting was more of my thing. Actually did some competitions. But I'm older and joints are creakier and
Yeah.
so I've modified my training. So I'm not lifting as heavy as I once was. But it's still a big part of my life. I think Aristotle was right. There is a connection between the body and the spirit. And if you have a strong body, you can help strengthen your spirit. And the spirit can also strengthen the body. So I'm a big believer in that. And then the outdoors, yeah, I love both Kate and I, we love backpacking. Some of our favorite things to do.
And I mean, and then with your kids, you probably have turned that into kind of a big part of your family life. Huh?
We try to make like at least a quarterly camping trip with the kids.
Well, it's great to hear that you're able to, you've created something and you're able to actually, live it. And as you live it, you keep developing more content to write about and talk
Yeah,
about,
that's yeah.
in the platforms that you've created as well. Do you ever get just kind of, we've been talking about sort of the positive. Do you ever get any serious criticism from anybody? You get uh, letters like, like why is it manliness, why isn't it
Yeah.
humanness or whatever, things like
Yeah, I
that.
mean, not really. When we first started, we did. I don't know why it was at the beginning. Maybe it's because like we were the only game, there was not many other things out there.
It was
I
kind
think
of
we've
before the haters movement started to.
yeah, but we don't really get it that much anymore because I think we've been around long enough that people know what we're about. Like I think the thing is like when people first hear the name, the Art of Manliness, they kind of laugh. They kind of like that's silly, and they kind of think about it's going to be this dumb like drink beer and watch football. But then they come to the site and they're like, oh wow, I get what he's trying to do. This is actually really cool. And then they enjoy it. They become fans. Yeah, I don't get we used to get more criticism in the beginning. I don't know why, and it's just kind of tapered off. I mean, one
Well,
thing
you've
that's yeah,
no, I'm saying you've built up, everyone knows who you are now, and you've got your own almost immunity against, some of the stuff that comes from ignorance.
yeah,
Um, so before we run out of time, though, I want to get into this latest thing that you're doing, the new thing that you and Kate are doing, which is Dying Breed, your
yeah,
Substack newsletter. Can you talk a little bit about that and what your goals are with that?
yeah. So we started it at the beginning of the year, and basically, Dying Breed's an outlet for article ideas that it wouldn't be a good fit for the Art of Manliness for some reason. Like we just don't think it would, and there's like things we want to write about that just wouldn't be a good fit for the Art of Manliness. We're looking for a narrow audience who would appreciate what we're trying to do. Because like whenever we love writing like about these sort of long form, deeply researched articles about history and lessons you can extract from history. When we publish that sort of thing on Art of Manliness, it really doesn't go anywhere. There's like I think a very small segment of our audience that really enjoys it, but our general audience, they're looking for like how to shave better, how to dress better, how to get in
Yeah.
shape, which is fine. I think there's anything wrong with that. And so what we're hoping to do with Dying Breed is taking some of those articles that we want to write about wouldn't do well in Art of Manliness and just have it on the Substack. So
And
that's what
and
we're
it
doing.
allows you to be kind of more literary and
Yeah, more literary. And what's great, we have comments on there. We don't have comments on the Art of Manliness. We used to have comments on the Art of Manliness, but it got, we were so big that we just had a lot of trolls. And so
yeah.
we're spending all of our time moderating comments. And that was just like, we're just going to get rid of comments. But we did miss interacting with our readers. And so what's nice about the Substack is because it's paid, it does do a lot of filtering. And so you just get people who are really excited to be there and they're doing their best to make it a great environment for everybody. So yeah, we did some articles. So my wife right now, Katie, with her background in religion, is really digging deep into this. She's doing a series of articles about Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Life Together. I think you'll actually resonate because I know you have a background in sort
Yeah.
of
And
religious communities.
yeah.
And so
And
she's trying to extract lessons what just regular people can get from Bonhoeffer's idea of the new monasticism. And so this week she published an article about the role of community in shaping a soul, and looking at Bonhoeffer's idea about the role of community in shaping yourself. And then she's going to dig into Bonhoeffer's ideas about sort of the routines or rituals you can have in your daily life to live a flourishing life. So it's been really exciting.
it's great to see how you can kind of bring it full circle. Has Katie ever thought about launching anything along the lines of the art of womanliness?
No, we do own the domain names for that.
You do, huh?
Um, but I think with the women's stuff, I think with the women's stuff, something we both noticed, it's a little more touchy. Even like within women themselves, there's a lot of like things around motherhood or what it means to be a
Uh-huh.
good mom. Like it's very women get very touchy about that, and I don't know. We just want to stay away from that. So
You got your hands full with what you've got right now
yeah,
anyway,
right.
but uh these, I want to mention to our listeners and viewers that if you want more information, because more people know about the Art of Manliness than they know about Pizza Crust, but there's some of our followers may not know about you, and they can find out everything, all the content that you carry by going to the Art of Manliness is it dot com, right?
.com. Yep.
And of course, Google search will get you there, but artofmanliness.com, we'll put it up, on our site as well. And you can go through the archives, and the topics are unbelievable. I mean, everything from, like, because you've had some great guests who are influenced by people that influenced me. Like one of the first ones I went to was how to win friends and influence people,
Oh yeah.
based on the works of Dale
Dale
Carnegie. Well,
Carnegie.
uh, so the it's real practical stuff. And I'm thinking of some of the other topics. There's one that I know that you're known for, is the rule of three.
Oh, the rule of three. Actually, I didn't write that. That was we used to have a guy work for us named Jeremy Anderberg. He wrote that, the rule of three, that we actually, that was based off of a podcast host we had, wrote about productivity. And the whole rule of three is just like write down three things you want to get done that day. That's it. Like you don't have this giant to-do list.
Yeah,
Three things. If you get those things done, you'll be good.
the day is a home run if you can get those three done.
Yeah.
Uh, but then some of your books, and I'm guessing a lot of these books maybe were either personal things that you were pursuing, or grew out of interviews that you did with some of your guests. But I mean, I made note of some of the books, like What is Honor, How to Quit Porn. I thought that was
Mm.
a really interesting topic. Do you get a lot of people who like pick that one up?
Yeah, we do. We've gotten actually a lot of letters about that series. So it started off as a series on the website, then we turned it into a book. Yeah, and that's helped out a lot of people. The honor, that was
It's
really
needed.
interesting. That we did that a long time ago. That was a really deep dive into the history of the concept of honor. I think a lot of people in the West, like we throw that word around a lot, but they don't really know what it means. And so we
Yeah.
took a deep dive into that.
uh the charismatic man.
Yeah. So
That's
that
got
was
to
based
be.
off a series of articles we did on how to just be more charismatic, how to be um more warm with others, how to show that you have, you're competent and empathetic. So that was another good one.
Were you a big Dale Carnegie fan yourself?
I was. So when I was a kid, I read, How to Win Friends and Influence
Yeah, me
People.
too. I mean,
When I was in
it
high
changed my
school.
life, that book.
It was a great book. I was a big Stephen Covey fan. That was a book
Yeah,
I read in high school.
yeah, that.
It's been great because of the podcast. I've had the opportunity to talk to two of Stephen Covey's children. I talked to Stephen Covey Jr., who kind of carried the mantle of his father's work, and then also his daughter, Cindy, I think is her name, who helped. Basically, she published or finished her dad's book that he was working on before he died. And it's all about how you can still live and continue to grow and develop even when you are past your prime. And I really enjoyed that.
Boy, well, what I really admire about what you've accomplished with your work is that it you've created a way to live your life and to support your family, and create a livelihood and do something meaningful that it kind of keeps feeding itself, and it allows you to explore the things that you love, that are important to you, and um, and enjoy it. You're enjoying life. You're flourishing, I guess,
Uh,
is the word, at
That's
least.
what we're trying to do. That's the goal.
Yeah. And I think that if I was going to sort of summarize everything that we've talked about here, and I think why people are drawn to your site is, going back to these very sort of erudite concepts, like, eudaimonia and arete and things like that, but bringing it down to earth. And I think maybe that's why Aristotle is so, maybe has more appeal even than Plato to you, is because he knew how to bring things down to earth and make it real. And, from, say, someone like Stephen Covey, who talk about seven habits, bringing it down to three things that you can do on any
Yeah,
given day that can change your life. I think that's what they need, a place to start, and then how to follow up with it once they've started.
I agree. Yeah, so we're trying to do. We're trying to help people answer those Tuesday afternoon questions. It's like, what do I need to be doing on a Tuesday afternoon to live a good life?
So if people want to, say, dive deeper into your work through the new Substack, Dying Breed, how do they do that? How do they
Uh,
tap into it?
just go to dyingbreed.net. It's a paid Substack. The way we're setting it up is Art of Manliness is for our free stuff, and Dying Breeds for our paid offering.
For people that want to just get a taste of it without having to subscribe? Is there it's sort of an introductory level there?
Yeah, you can do. There's a free trial that you can sign up for, where you can kind of get a taste of what we're doing, and you can kind of explore some of the stuff we're doing. Something else we're doing on Diet Breed. My wife published these things called Sunday Firesides.
Oh yeah, the firesides.
She publishes them Sunday morning, and it's just sort of a short 300 word thought about different things. It's kind of kickstart your day and reflect on as you go throughout your week.
Is that a separate publication from Dying Breed?
It's on Dying Breed. It's part of Dying Breed. It's
So
a
you have to.
continuing series. She started on the Art of Manliness, and we've taken it over to Dying Breed.
I see. Well, I'm fascinated by how you've put the whole thing together and how it's kind of grown and evolved over the last 15, 17 years now. So congratulations on all of that, and thank you for the work, and thank you for really for the service that you provide for people who are hungry to learn how to grow as a human being.
Well, thank you, Peter. I appreciate it. Thanks for what you do.
No. And while I have you, thank you for having me on the Art of
Yeah.
Manliness.
Make
That
sure you
was
link to the show. That was I got a lot of compliments about that show.
Oh, good. Well, that
I
was
was actually
exciting
we were
for
at
me
a
to be a part of it.
we were actually I was actually at a strenuous life meetup, and this guy's like, you know what? I saw that thing about bread, and he's like, when it first came up on my feed, I was like, bread? Like, is he running out of ideas or something? And
Yeah,
then
right.
he listened to it. He's like, that was the one of the best podcasts I shared with all my friends. It was just
Oh,
because
that's nice.
I love what you do. You took the idea of making bread and how that is a metaphor for living a flourishing life. And so I think I love it. That's a great example of taking those very abstract ideas and making it concrete.
Yeah, that was my version of it, an attempt to do, in my little world, what you're doing, on many subjects. So, I was honored to be a part of that, and thanks for having me on, and thank you for coming on and sharing, your story and everything that you've learned over these last couple of years. So maybe we'll go out with one other question. We, since we've been talking about sort of this rule of three and summarizing things and bringing it down, can you think of like three or four of the most important takeaways that you've garnered as a result of doing the Art of Manliness that you
Mm.
would share with people? So what are the three or four most important things that I could get as a result of what you brought to us? Do you have any thoughts about what they might be?
Okay, I know one is gonna be make sure you move your body every day, some sort of physical activity. Doesn't have to be barbell training, but like go for a walk, move
Ah,
your body.
move your
I'm a
body.
big believer in that because that just will help your overall physical health, but also mental health. Number two is uh, there's this idea from Nietzsche, who I think also another like it was like a 20th century theologian picked it up, but success in life just often comes down to a long obedience in the same direction. And that's what we're trying to do. I've the success I've had with the Art of Manliness, and Kate and I've had with the Art of Manliness, has just been being consistent, uh, publishing every week without fail for 17 years, and not only applies to a business but also applies to a marriage. It applies to a community life. Just have to be consistent with it. Number three.
Before you move on to three, that resonates with me from the standpoint of the concept of praxis of what spiritual practice is this consistently doing it. You meditate every day, pray every day, do whatever it is that you're going to do, but do it regularly. And again, it applies to move your body as well. It's one
Yeah,
exercise session is not going to accomplish what doing sessions every single day will accomplish.
that's right. Number three would be um I think like learn from history. Like we have this unbelievable heritage of people who have thought about the big problems, the big issues that face humans. Like tap into that. Like don't take it for granted. So read Aristotle, but also read Jane Austen, read Theodore Roosevelt. He was actually a great writer.
Yeah, yeah.
Read I mean read your book. Like look for ways. There's people who are thinking about the problems of humanity, and they don't have the answer, but they've probably got you something that can go get you in the right direction. So I'd say read widely, is another one. Um, I think those three. If you move your body every day, be consistent with whatever it is you're doing, read widely, you're gonna do all right. And I think here's a big thing. I mean, this if you're married, this is a big takeaway I've gotten from the Art of Manliness. I had this lady on. She's a marriage counselor. She wrote this book about the weekly marriage meeting,
Uh,
um, and my wife and I started implementing this several years ago. If you're married, this is a big game changer. And it's basically you just get together with your spouse uh, once a week, and you do these four things. You take time to appreciate each other. So like talk about all the things. Hey, honey, I appreciate you doing this in the week, and I appreciate how you helped me out when I was having a hard time.
uh,
So appreciate each other. Then you
yeah,
discuss to-dos. So this is like the business of running a household.
yeah,
Here's the stuff that needs to get fixed. Here's where Johnny needs to be this week for practice. Like you discuss the to-do, like the practical stuff. And then then the next part of the marriage meeting is you plan for good times. So you plan for good times as a couple. Like, are we going to go on a date this week
uh,
or something like that? Or you plan for good times as a family? Are we going to go on a vacation? Are we going to do something this weekend with our kids? Then also plan for individual times. Like, well, I want to do this thing with my friends. Am I going to be able to do that? So plan for good times. And the fourth thing is you discuss big issues. So whatever big issues are going on in your life could be health problems, could be things with in-laws, it could be problems
yeah,
with kids. um, if you're married, I think this could be a game. Like we've gotten a lot of letters about this, from guys who are married. They implemented the marriage meeting, and it's like I wouldn't say transformed, but like it really did help their marriage out a lot. Um,
yes.
so
I can attest to that. Not we didn't know it the way you were describing it, but we did exactly that for a number of years, and I knew how. Now looking back, I can see how important they were because when we stopped doing it or started cutting back on it, we were doing it. We realized quickly how much we needed those meetings to keep us right, going in the right
yeah,
direction and flourishing because
yeah.
it all comes back to flourishing in the end.
It all comes back to flourishing. It goes back to Aristotle. So this when we go back to Aristotle. Aristotle talked about this in his work Economics. So for
Ah,
Aristotle, economics it was all based in the home. It was like home management. So when you're doing your marriage meeting, it's all about how can you develop a household that'll allow all the individuals in it to flourish. So that's what we're trying to do.
beautiful. Well, Brett McKay, thank you so much for being with us on Pizza Quest. As we always say here, it's more about the quest than it is about the pizza.
There you
And
go.
and I think you're living it and proving it. And thanks for sharing all I tell you these last things that you were talking about, your takeaways. There's enough there for if anybody could just implement one or two of those things, it will change your life. So thank you so much for being a part of changing many people's lives.
Thank you, Peter.
And give our best to Kate. Thank you, and we'll be. I'm following you on the Substack now. I'm
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
yeah. So good luck with that and launching a new thing. And you've actually inspired me because I will be starting my own Substack in a couple of weeks, and I've been
Oh,
putting it off
great.
for a long time. But when I saw what you were doing there and realized this is in a way kind of the medium for writers,
Right.
that podcasting was earlier, and what we could blogs and all the things that have come in over the last 20 years. I think that this is a new medium that is really an opportunity for
Oh,
people
for
to
sure. I
express
agree.
themselves.
Well, let me
All
know
right,
when it goes live.
I will. Thanks, Brett, and
All right.
have a great week. And we'll see all of you, and we'll see those of you who are listening or watching us the next episode of Pizza Quest. Join us then.